So, Andy spent the majority of his career at Walmart, but he left 10 years ago to start his own company, Trove, and he'll be discussing that a little bit later when I ask him some more questions about that. Andy is a TED speaker and has been featured on NPR's All Things Considered and in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. He's also one of Walmart's youngest corporate officers, has testified before the U.S. Senate and the House of Reps as an expert in business and sustainability. He graduated cum laude with a Bachelor's of Science in Engineering and an MBA, both from Washington University in St. Louis. And he's been recognized professionally as a Sam M. Walton Entrepreneur of the Year, recognized as a 40 Under 40 business leader, and most recently featured as the digital cover of Forbes magazine. He lives in the Bay Area with his spouse and his 2 teenagers. So help me welcome Andy to the stage. Thank you. Yes. All right. So we're going to have a little chat here, talking about a few things that you've done in your career. Our topic is quitting the status quo and making your own path, essentially. So when you started as your role as Chief Sustainability Officer at Walmart, which was the first position of its kind there, what was the aha moment when you realized the how you could do this? The how of it.
Sure, and there's no connection to Tupac here.
Yeah, I am sorry. Yeah, I know it. Danny beats us all with that.
Yes. Sustainability at Walmart was one of those examples of right place, right time. It was a role that I had never expected to be in and ended up in, and it's one of those moments I look back on that some of us have this experience where it changes our careers. My eyes were open to so many things society-wise about energy and climate and water and materials and toxicity, wages, jobs that I had never spent time after 15 years of business aware of. And once you have that awareness, it's hard to not see that. And so from sustainability, after 3 years there, I realized that the most important thing for any retailer is not the stores or the trucks. The most important thing are the products that the retailer sells. Mm-hmm. And so I decided that I would move into products. So I went from sustainability to leading Walmart's own brands, massive business to be leading, with a thought that I would just change all the Walmart products on the shelves across 240 categories.
Easy.
And Procter & Gamble and Kimberly-Clark, and everybody would follow, and we'd be good. That's not how it went. I realized that so much of what was being done for the environmental work on products was not going to get us there. A good example, and one that really had me realize I needed to do something else, was the example of this plastic fork. If any of you ever, now you'll see these. Next time you see a plastic fork, spoon, or knife with the handles cut out, I don't know how many people remember these. It was 8% less resin, 8% less plastic in every fork, knife, and spoon, but then we sold 10 times as many. And that was happening again and again, and it's happening not just at Walmart, it happens in many things, where as a society, we make every item a little bit less bad, but then we end up producing and selling 4 or 5 times the number. And so I knew at some point that I had to focus on that, and that wasn't going to happen for me inside a company like Walmart. I had to go out and figure out those next models. That's what led me to start Trove.
The fork. The fork is what led you.
It's the fork.
Just the fork. Great.
Metaphorically, the fork.
Metaphorically, the fork, yes. So how do you define sustainability, and what's different today than it was back in the early 2000s when you were in Walmart?
Defining sustainability is a good question. I think people talk so much sustainability. People talk a lot about sustainability, but it's not often defined.
Right.
For me, from a business, I'm just speaking as a business person, sustainability is the longevity of the decisions that we make. Business people make decisions all day, every day, of course. And I think that the broader perspective of the implications of those decisions to more stakeholders over a longer period of time, and making sure that the things we're deciding right now don't just benefit 2 or 3 quarters, but at least we're aware of 5 to 10 years from now.
Or maybe our children's generation, yeah.
7 generations is kind of one of the frameworks that I think is important.
Yes.
And it's not that all the time in business, by realizing that, you can then do something different right now. But the realization might help you shift what you do just a bit. And I think the idea of really building toward bigger innovations is how I define that. In the 2000s, when I was sustainability at Walmart, the context was so different than now. Sustainability was just being brought into the boardroom. Gen Zs and millennials were maybe born, but
Maybe, yeah.
I guess they were alive, but
Yeah.
not the purchasing power that people have today.
Right.
And so I think that the whole market has shifted in the last 20 years where
Yeah.
the kind of freedom and the expectation that business has for addressing the societal problems has moved a lot.
As you mentioned before, we're beyond that revolution now, and we're into let's get it done right now. So yeah, it's very different.
Yeah.
Like you said before, it's low-hanging fruit. Everybody could do it.
Well, the challenges are much greater, right?
Yes.
It's no longer just on the side. It's actually
Yes.
the core business, and the opportunities are greater.
Yes.
So I think both.
And you said, what is the percentage of the business model that you think will entail some sort of sustainability going forward for every company? You thought it was almost 30% going forward.
Well, I expected sustainability, so 20 years ago, sustainability was a side desk,
Yeah.
right, somewhere on the 4th floor, aside from the
Yes.
mainline business.
Yeah.
And that is not going to be successful today. So I think that sustainability is a mindset that in many ways would inform any CEO's thought about where the business is going.
Yeah.
It would inform the strategy, the executive's role, how people think of the business itself.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be major. Okay, so let's talk about resale specifically. Can you explain a little bit about this industry and why you started Trove and what Trove does? Yes.
So back to the fork. Apparently the fork was a big deal. When we think about retail today, the way that retail grows, almost all retail growth is about selling more items, and selling more items means producing more items, which is 75 to 80% of the emissions of the things that retailers do. It's in the making of the items that are sold in retail. And so resale is one of the, we need more, but it's one of the few innovations where companies that sell things can make additional money by getting more money from the things they've already sold. So instead of Patagonia just selling the black medium nano puff the first time, they allow customers to bring that back to a store, get a gift card. They will then resell that item to another customer. So the idea of what the financial benefit is of the margin is not limited to the first sale. It's the first sale, the second sale, the third sale. It might be the experience if you own the jacket, many more things. And so that's what we do for brands. We help brands make money beyond just the first sale of the item.
So you said a little bit about the experience. I loved when we were talking before, you were talking about the stories. Somebody is more apt to buy a pair of pants that traversed the country 4 times and maybe saw somebody, I don't know, doing some crazy things. I don't know if I want to go that far, but that story is what you're selling again now. It's more than just the product now.
So as brands, so we've been in this space now for 10 years. And 10 years ago, there were no brands that were buying back and reselling their items.
Yeah.
The first brand to do that was Patagonia. That was 2017. Quickly followed by Eileen Fisher and REI, all in 2017. A year and a half ago, there were about 30 brands that had formalized buyback and resale programs. In other words, you could walk into a Lululemon store, hand them last year's yoga pants, get a gift card, and shop for used yoga pants, which you can do right now.
Yep.
Now there are 160 brands with formal buyback and resale programs. So when you look at the trend and what's happening, one of the reasons that's happening is because especially younger generations, we've got access to every product in our pocket. Mm-hmm. And so when you think of what makes a product special, some of what makes a product special is finding the Gap sweatshirt from 2005.
Vintage.
Right, it's the vintage or the treasure hunt and the experience. Now, people still want 2-day shipping.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to actually rummage through
Right.
bins and bins of stuff.
Right.
But the idea is just like certified pre-owned automotive. If you couldn't afford a Lexus, you were going to buy a Honda. But because they're certified pre-owned Lexus, you can go to the Lexus dealer and you can get into Lexus.
Right.
Fantastic.
It's the brand plus the story with it. Yeah.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
I love that. So part of that, convincing, when you started Trove, how did you convince them, the corporate world, that it was good for their bottom line? Because you could get more value out of that product, obviously,
Yes.
right? You could sell it again, and maybe even again, and just produce it once, right?
Well, today's about innovation, so I'll tell a quick story of
Wonderful.
when you start anything, if you're going to start anything that isn't being done, it's not being done because currently to most people it looks crazy. I am very certain that at some point in the future, a third of the items that we buy will come from other people. I have no doubt in my mind, because we all like nicer things for less money. But back in the time we started with Patagonia, the time we started with Eileen Fisher, that was a crazy idea. And I'll tell the quick story of Eileen Fisher. When you've got an idea that you really believe in, you've got to convince other people to join you. And Eileen Fisher is an incredible business leader who has been on the forefront of many sustainability efforts. So I found the person that was responsible for this on Eileen's team. Her name was Cynthia Power. We are still friends today. We just talked. But I knew when Cynthia was going to walk out of Eileen Fisher's main office on Broadway in New York City. So I made a plane ticket. I flew to New York. I sat outside their office on Broadway, and I waited for Cynthia to walk out. Tuesday, she didn't walk out of the building. I changed my ticket. I waited there Wednesday. She didn't walk out. I changed my ticket. I waited there Thursday. She walked out of the office, and I jumped in the cab with her. And she was a little bit alarmed. And I quickly, she was more alarmed when she realized I knew who she was. It was probably more alarming.
A little more.
But you've got a few minutes then to explain why this is not a crazy idea, and this is something that we're definitely going to do together. And at first, things seem pretty crazy, and then all of a sudden Patagonia does it, and Eileen Fisher does it, and REI does it, lululemon and Nordstrom and Gucci and Canada Goose, and all of a sudden there's a moment where we all as customers, why can't I walk in and bring my, pick your brand, why can't I walk in and bring my item back for a gift card? What? You don't do that? It would be like being at a brand and not being able to return an item today. So things start as crazy. They take some crazy people to be convinced this is going to happen and we're going to figure it out. And then they become the norm. And actually, at some point, not doing them feels crazy.
Right. And I can go into that. Maybe I'll ask that question now. So now that you've created the new status quo,
Creating, yes.
what's next in terms of innovating and whatnot with this industry? Yeah.
So we've got 160, there are 100, and these are not all brands that we support as Trove, but there are 160 brands globally that are buying back and reselling the product. But it's still a very small percentage of resale. So over the next 5+ years, it will continue to change substantially. I imagine, well, first of all, I imagine a distant future where I imagine talking to a grandchild, and they'll say, "So, Grandpa, what used to happen when you weren't wearing your Patagonia anymore? What, you just left it in your closet?" And I would say, "Yeah, we weren't all that bright back then. That's what we did. We just left all of our stuff in our closets." That'll seem crazy. And I imagine 4 or 5 years from now, I'll walk into an REI and I'll look at the number of bikes. I'll be looking for a bike, and there might be 15 new bikes for sale, and 5 of them might be used. And the used bikes will be sold with a 1-year guarantee, just like any new bike REI sells. The person standing there will be able to help me fit me for the bike, whether it's new or used. The used bike might be 30% less. The bike buyer in REI will buy new and used bikes, whichever is going to make them more money and drive more customer benefit. They'll just be serving me as someone who wants a bike. Won't matter if it's new and used. The new bike, I might be able to buy the new bike 5 years from now, and it might say, "You bring it back in 6 months in good condition, we'll give you 85% of what you paid back." Call that rental without a contract. So we're still early in how far this industry is going to move, and I find it incredibly exciting of where we are in retail and how much is still to change.
Yeah, I find it fascinating too. And it's not only just like a sustainability thing, but it's a financial model that's a new innovative way to make money, again, for the bottom line.
That's right.
It's crazy.
One of the things I've always believed in for sustainability, for me, where I put my time really caring as a dad about the future of things, as a human, I've always wanted to pace myself against things that do not require everybody to be an environmentalist. Because that's a tall ask, and that's not, I'm going to look for things that allow us just to be a smarter buyer of a bike. And so what's cool about, what I enjoy about what we do is, if you're a brand that competes with, Arc'teryx is a brand that we work with, if you compete with Arc'teryx, and Arc'teryx is bringing in new customers because they've got new and used items, and they're creating more loyalty so customers never leave the brand, and you compete with Arc'teryx and you don't do that, you're going to be less competitive. And so I don't care if the people who compete with Arc'teryx open their eyes and they're like, wow, this is really good for the world and the planet and we should do it. Or they just say, my gosh, we're going to lose our jobs. We better get with the program. It doesn't matter. Either way, we're not going to spend the resourcing we do right now making item after item after item and letting it sit in a closet. One of the stats I saw from British Fashion Council last week was there are now enough garments on the planet right now to clothe the next 6 generations of humans right now.
That's mind-blowing, yeah.
So I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I know fashion is like the second most wasteful industry out there, and this is just such a great solution to it. I love it. Okay, I'm gonna go back to something I was doing before. Now that we've talked about Trove and Resale and this innovative new way of thinking about retail, as a entrepreneur yourself, what kind of characteristics do you think one needs to be successful, or an innovator, or somebody who quits the status quo? What do they need to know? What do they need to have?
I think that there are probably an infinite number of answers to this. For me, I think the qualities that I think are really important is the kind of belief in a future that doesn't exist yet, and a determination that for me, it's obvious. I can't see a reason that both my kids, you mentioned I have 2 teenagers, they could never, we would never choose to get them Patagonia because they're growing teenagers. So we buy them 2 nice Patagonia jackets, and a year later they need 2 new jackets. And Patagonia is expensive for that, not for us, but for them growing. For used jackets, we can buy them 2 used jackets. We bring them back the following year. They get a gift card. They buy the used jackets. And the difference between the gift card we got back and the used jacket is less than a jacket would be at Target or Costco. That to me just makes sense. So I see this years ago, and I can't stand the fact we don't operate like this. Like, why isn't every retailer doing that? This is just a better way to do things. So I think one of the qualities is almost beyond all data, because there's no data that says we'll do something, beyond all data, a belief that there is a way that things should operate or be organized that isn't true yet, but will be. And then I think the second piece is the determination that no matter how many dark moments you have where you actually receive tremendous amounts of data that this is ridiculous and no one will do it,
Right.
you have to have the kind of grit to live through those and to say, two tough days out of a week is par for the course. So often in those times, we've talked about music.
Right.
Music is a saving grace for me, depending on how negative the moment, sometimes different music.
Right.
But you just have to have the grit to stick with it in the face of, a lot of data that would say there are a lot of rough spots. Because in the end, that's the ability to actually build something new.
Right. That passion. I know, as an entrepreneur myself.
Yes.
Yes, you got to keep that passion, keep that dream alive. Talk about it a lot. That's what I'm trying to do now too. Yeah.
Always be selling.
Always be selling. Yep. Okay. So let's see here. Some of the attendees here today have started their own businesses from the ground up, and while you have as well, you've also worked for a large corporation with lots of resources. Based on your experience in each, how can each scenario be impactful in its own way as an entrepreneur, as a business?
I have always found, I think it's a human thing, I think sometimes the grass is always greener. When I sit in a very small enterprise and everything is available, there's no one who would, the board potentially, but as an entrepreneur, very few people, you get the choice you get all the rope you need to be the end of things or do what you want with. When you're in a large company, I feel like there are fewer degrees of that freedom, but the scale is much greater. And I appreciate both, and I think both are really important for change in the world. There are things that, I'm anywhere, and I see things that are still left over from the work we did at Wal-Mart that have scaled globally and have changed mentalities and people's perspectives. And I think change can happen from either place. I think that big companies, I'm not crediting this, it's not my thought, but someone distinguished, existing companies, their job is to move the flywheel. You've got, basically it's the status quo and your job is to turn the crank. And every time you turn that refined crank, you make more money doing it. The way of doing things will change over time, and the entrepreneur's job is to basically stake out a whole new crank a whole new mousetrap. And if you stake that out, you're not competing directly with the existing, you're doing something different. And so I think big companies are very good at making that crank more efficient. Startups and innovators can be very good at a whole new crank, and the world needs both. I'm having a moment where I'm in love with entrepreneurs, and I wish we had 100 times the number we have right now.
I know. I feel like the U.S. needs to as a country, recognize that. And that's where our true roots came from, innovation and entrepreneurs and small business. So, yes.
I love them.
I love it, too. Okay, so what's next for you? Open-ended question.
Yeah, I mean, I am still, one of the thoughts I have is when a problem, we've talked kind of about when a problem or challenge gets you. The head of Google X, Obi, usually talks about when a problem has you in its grasp and it doesn't let go, it's not always your choice to you don't let go of it, it kind of lets go of you. I'm not through this yet, so I'm really determined to see this future still play out that I want to see in retail. At the same time, whenever you are innovating in a space, you deal with all the messiness in the space, and you get, whether it's around a corner and you see new things, or you get to the top of a hill, you see new ground. There are other technologies that I see playing out, like the digitization of physical things. It's fascinating. There'll be a future where when we buy things, things aren't, I mean, this jacket's already physical, but will also be digital.
Yep.
In the same way that Apple knows when I'm using or not using an iPhone, we will know that. Part of the value of the iPhone is in the usage, the continued software updates. The same thing will happen for the things in our lives. There's so many new spaces in this problem that I can see other things that are inevitable. So, don't know yet.
Okay.
But there's no shortage of change coming that I'm excited about.
Yes, me too. I speak from the sewn goods industry and specifically fashion and other sewn goods, but I see the tech coming and it excites me more. It's more like squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. There's so many things out there that I can't, which one do I focus on? Which one do I go after? Yeah. So if you have true passion, I know passion in your industry or whatever you're doing, I feel you're probably the same way. Yeah.
And the more I see things, the more I realize that we're not as far along in the digital transformation of how we organize, create value, and operate.
As far along as compared to what?
Well, so probably 2 years ago, if asked, I would have said we're a third of the way through this digital transformation. And some people would say we can shop online right now for retail and commerce. Like we're fairly far through it. You can find almost anything. We can find fashion and food and have food delivered. And I would say we're probably 10% through. So the more I see, the less far through I think we are of this transformation. And it's not because we're not as far along, it's because I see more things that are still going to tip from the ability to make all these items, both physical and digital, and what that will mean.
Okay. One last question then, before we do some Q&A with the audience here.
Discounts at Patagonia.
Discount, oh yeah. Where can I get one? Do you have access to all that?
By the way, in case we haven't shared it, so any of the brands that we support with Resale or anyone else does, you find it on the brand's website. If you go to arcteryx.com, canadagoose.com, patagonia.com, you just buy directly from the brand as if you drive on to the Lexus dealer and say, oh, look, you've got certified pre-owned. They all come with guarantees. You can shop. If you're not exposed to this way of shopping, I would definitely recommend it. And you can also find value for these brands that you have in your closet. So please check out, just even to be exposed to what is changing.
Yes.
I would recommend checking out these sites. And
how maybe in whatever you do in your industries, you can apply the same type of model because it's out there in every industry. So I'm going to open it up to audience questions, and then I have a quick little bit more of a get to know you at the end here, a little fire question and answer quick thing. So I know we have a mic runner out there. I don't know if she's out there, or maybe we don't. Is there a mic runner out there? Maybe Danny went out to get there. Does anyone have questions? Let's start with that, because we can have you come up to the front.
I'll do both jobs.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and then he'll come over to you. It's kind of hard to see out here. Or you can keep talking, because I could keep going up.
There's one.
Yeah, we have one there.
2.
They had to think about them for a minute, yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so as you talk about the space and you talked about the digital transformation and how it's kind of evolving this, what are your thoughts of how it might move into XR, VR, to help even transform it even further?
XR?
What do you mean by XR?
Like virtual reality.
Virtual,
Yeah.
VR, yeah, okay, yeah, got it.
I don't have a lot of expertise. I don't think I'm the person to speak about augmented reality or virtual reality. The shopping experience is clearly going to change. The ability to see yourself in things, not just see a static picture on a website. Zero doubt that that will change. So I think, of course, expect a lot of experience to change with commerce. And the goal of commerce, the more immersive the experience, the better the retailers tend to do. So I think that there are many changes. That experience is going to be one of them. The ability still to, whether you can try those shoes on without being in a store because of augmented or virtual reality, the shoes still are going to be a combination of, these are on running shoes, they're used. The distinction between new and used will go away, whether that's on virtual reality, augmented reality, physical stores, websites, social media. Brands will stand behind their items beyond the first sale.
Yeah, I know in the fashion world specifically, though, you'll be able to try on a jacket.
Yeah.
You'll have it, if it's new, sometimes there's some tech coming out where you can customize it to your exact specifications. So you enter in your little data and all your measurements, and boom, it'll fit you or show you exactly how it will look on you, or it'll be made specifically to you. But then that's a question too. So if it's custom made, how is that going to affect the resale going forward?
Alterations and custom made is not awesome for resale, but knowing the more amount of resale out there, knowing that a shirt has had the sleeves altered is not a problem, so long as increasingly we can match to who's shopping.
Just find the right customer.
That's
match
right.
The customer.
And then alterations would have a different resale price. They'd offer a different post-market opportunity to re-alter, which is a great opportunity kind of post-market. The other thing that I'm waiting for with more digitization is when I shop right now, I shop based on my interest, but when I'm at whatever store and I'm looking at a piece, I would like to know how much of my closet it goes with. Is this something that's going to go with one piece that I have or 20? Is this kind of an unlock for a part of my wardrobe that's where I'm going? Is it something that's going to fit me, made of fabrics that I tend to like? There's an entire world to still open up around digital.
Oh, so much data that's going to happen. All right, somebody else had another question? I don't know where the microphone went.
Hi.
Yes.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
I'm Catherine Cherry.
Hey.
I'm a food and beverage marketer. I have such deep admiration for what your company is doing in the retail space, helping close the loop. I'm wondering, do you see hope in the consumer packaged good arena? Where are we going in the future with single-use packaging? I come from that background as well, and I'd love to hear any hope that you see on the horizon, any sparks that are catching your interest in the food and beverage space.
So from this is going back kind of from my background with Walmart, packaging is a thing in consumables because there's so much packaging relative to the products. But the even bigger effect is the agricultural practices, likely upstream of that. And there is a lot of innovation that is happening there, and clearly not enough. But there's a lot that's happening in terms of regenerative agriculture. There's a lot that's happening in terms of drip irrigation and water. There are a lot of technologies happening there, and I think one of the opportunities for all of us is to go beyond what is right in front of us, which is sometimes the packaging or the trucks or the stores, and more awareness of where a product might be. The biggest thing might be the packaging, but oftentimes it's upstream and it might be the ag. One of the biggest things that anybody can do sustainability-wise is meat substitutions, right? And so we look at agriculture. That is a very big land use, water use, energy use. So I think it's often in agriculture. I am hopeful about that, but it's these are challenges that we have gotten to where we are over 50 years. They're not going to be fixed in 5. I think what's most encouraging is the work that's being done right now. The Inflation Reduction Act was a massive step forward. Exxon Engine 1. There have been a number of things that have happened at the corporate governance level over the last 3 years that I think are very encouraging.
Sustainability-wise. Thank you. Yes. Do we have another question out there? Yes. The mic right here? Oh. I think right here in the front row.
As you're running the mic over, when I think about meat, can you imagine 20 years ago having Burger King have an Impossible Burger?
Yeah.
Like back to the way that things are changing, that would have been crazy 30 years ago.
Their core is actual physical meat.
Right.
How would they ever do anything else? Yes.
But I mean, these companies aren't doing things just for benevolent reasons. There clearly is a customer that
Right.
is interested in that. And so
Yeah.
I think that we are back to there are more challenges in agriculture. There are also more opportunities.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead with your question.
Hi, so what are your predictions and hopes, I guess, for fast fashion? Because, you know, they're probably really bad for everything, and, you know, it's kind of like single use, go to the party, buy a $20 dress. So do you think that your ideas are going to go towards, like, everybody else that wants, like, the quality stuff and everything, and it'll make a comeback, I guess?
I wish that it was going to address the fast fashion, I'll say, crisis. I think the fast fashion situation is because there's customer pool for inexpensive newness, which is basically access to newness, which many humans crave, we all crave. There are many ways to solve that. Increasingly for Gen Z and millennials, there is less acceptance of kind of the badge, which brands really represent where you shop as a reflection of your identity and how we see ourselves. And there is a moment that resale will eclipse fast fashion. But for the near term, I wish I could say that this is going to address the fast fashion challenge. I don't expect that's going to happen near term. I think that fast fashion serves one need, which is very inexpensive access to new. On the other side, what we see is people who were buying a Banana Republic shirt, you know, stepping up, or a Michael Kors bag, being able to afford a Gucci bag. And that Gucci bag is moving several times. So we also see a young generation both buying fast fashion and putting a premium on narrative-based products with a story, the treasure hunt of finding it, talking about where you found it, how you got it, that it wasn't new. If you look at prom dresses right now, there is, depending on the city and the market, it is odd to walk into high school prom and see a bunch of new dresses.
Right.
Again, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, that was not the case.
Unless you made it yourself. That was pretty cool.
That would be incredibly cool.
Which I did.
But it's, so those, you know,
Yes.
brands follow culture
Yes.
and feed it back. And I think that those cultures with younger generations is shifting. I can't wait till we are beyond
Yes.
this fast fashion craze, and especially the Sheins and the ultra
too.
fast fashion.
Me
But I
too.
don't think this is going to do it.
Yes. I think part of it too is just a little bit more educating the consumer of like what it takes and what actually happens when you buy that new cheap item
Yeah.
versus something that's made with livable wages in the U.S., et cetera, et cetera. So that's a big thing too. I'm looking at how do I educate the consumer, which is my client is the designer who manufactures with me, but then the consumer for them is the person who buys their clothes. So how do we go through that whole line of educating them and making this knowledgeable to everybody? So
Do you see,
Yeah.
Erica, do you see the shift toward younger customers appreciating the quality of fabrics and craftsmanship?
yes, I do. But I also am, like for instance, my own children who are 9, 11, 13, I'm educating them from home, but I'm trying to help them see and you know, tell their friends and help them understand that this is valuable. So we've hired some college-age students at the factory, and they're starting to go, yes, this is something cool now, and that's how they're going after it. But it's also a little bit of, this is our planet too. We have a long life still left here, and we want to preserve it. So I see it in a few different ways. So I'm optimistic.
Yesterday I was at University of Arizona, several different classes. There was a freshman class and a junior class, and one of the questions I asked is show of hands. Who in the last 3 months has bought an item used, thrifted from a brand? I couldn't find a hand that didn't go up in the classroom.
That's,
And I would say that is a shift, not in the last 10, 20 years, that is a shift in the last 6 months.
wow.
6 months ago, 70% of the hands might have gone up. We are living in a time, and I think that any retailer that wants to stay relevant, brands that want to stay relevant, shouldn't be 10 steps ahead of customers because you're out of business. But brands and retailers need to stay one step ahead.
Yeah.
And sometimes by staying one step ahead, we can debate, do brands create the culture or
Vice versa,
are they
yeah.
just ahead of it? But
Right.
there are changes in new generations of customers, and those are substantial.
That again is optimistic. Okay, so quick, we're gonna finish up here. So this is a quick little thing I like to do. I preface it with "Do you like?" and it's one or the other, and you just say whatever comes to your mind. Okay, ready? Chinese or Indian food?
Ooh, Indian.
Fast or slow?
Fast. Sometimes slow.
Wine or beer? Wine or beer?
Beer, beer, beer.
Hot or cold?
Hot.
Donut or muffin?
Donut.
Ford or Chevy? Both American.
No. Probably Ford.
Okay. And
I
I
was
know
very
you're
quick on that one.
I know. I know you're from California. LA Angels or Dodgers?
Oh my gosh. So, okay, I call it sport ball. Giants.
Diamondbacks.
Oh my gosh. Tupac.
Tupac. All right. Thank you so much, Eddie. All right. Good job. I appreciate it. Liz is going to come up. Yeah.
Yep,
you're
I'm
gonna come
coming.